Look at the weather.
It's beautiful here.
Non-stop rain.
Oh, man, it is a blazer out there.
It's cold and it's shivery.
It is cold.
Really coming down here.
I really enjoy your weather reports.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we're talking weather in a whole new way. From historical events to what's coming up, plus weather news, science, safety, fun facts, and more.
I like where this is going.
This is Weather Weekly. Weather Weekly with Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey.
Welcome to another episode. It is episode number 14 of Weather Weekly. I am your host, meteorologist Marcus Bailey with Wish TV in Indianapolis, Indiana on, well, now the middle of May. Man, we're just rolling right along the week of May 10th. Good to be with you here for another week. Got a good episode here. I kind of struggled to find a topic, and a couple of posts on social media that popped up kind of gave me an idea, and I'll talk about my subject matter here in just a bit, but I think it's a fun one. It's just me riding solo here, but we always love to hear your comments and your ideas as well. You can reach out to me on social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just search for Marcus Bailey Weather. Actually, on Twitter, it's just at Marcus Bailey. You can also email me anytime at marcus.bailey@wishtv.com. We'd love to hear your suggestions, your thoughts, your ideas. Heard from a few of you over the last couple of weeks, and already getting some guests lined up. So we're looking forward to that here as we start rolling along. Before we get into the subject matter here for the day today, I do want to have a couple of weather headlines that I did want to bring to your attention locally first. And there is plenty to talk about. Now, as we're almost halfway through the month, it's hard to believe. Next time we talk, we're going to be on the back half of the month of May. First and foremost, I want to talk about, and this is going to be hopefully either it's next week's podcast episode or the week after. But we're going to be talking with one of the meteorologists at the Indianapolis National Weather Service. I don't know if you saw this or not, but the climate data has changed. And then that happens every 10 years. They take what's called a 30-year, a 30-year average. So it has shifted from 1981 to 2010. That was our 30-year average. And now that we are in a new decade, we're at 2021, we have basically eliminated the 80s from our climate records when we look at averages. And averages are temperatures, it is precipitation, it's snowfall. And that has now changed to be 1991 to 2020. That's what we're looking at here. Couple of notes. And like I said, we'll have, I believe it's going to be Mike Ryan that will be talking, and we've had him on the podcast before, talking about his winter weather forecast, but he's going to kind of run down the nuts and bolts of the changes that we saw. And those of you that listen to that podcast, you have to scroll back several episodes here. At the end of it, though, he kind of briefly mentions how those averages were going to change. And he said probably the biggest change that we were going to see is that our average low temperatures were going to be warmer. If you look at kind of a bar graph over time, it's kind of trended that way to where our average lows get a little bit on the warmer side. So here are some of the notes, and this is for Indianapolis specifically. All months except November experience increases in average temperatures. So that's pretty significant. Because that's factoring in both the highs and the lows. Now, the lows obviously can kind of pull everything up a little bit. The greatest increase was the month of December. It was a full, actually, it was over 1.5 degrees. It was 1.7 degrees. So that's pretty significant for the month of December. All other months saw increases anywhere between 0.2 degrees and 0.9 degrees. Increases in maximum and minimum temperatures were largely uniform, but there were several months where the minimum temperature increases were greater. So Mike had kind of talked and alluded to that was going to be a possibility. 3 months with largest average temperatures increases. December, we previously mentioned, May and September experienced the greatest rises in minimum temperatures. So those rises in minimum temperatures really kind of brought things up. The seasonal average temperatures increased in all seasons, 0.4 to 0.9. Greatest increase in winter season. And I think that's interesting. And I'll talk about this a little bit too, but obviously warming things up and winter season for us meteorologists doesn't follow the calendar or of the solstice or anything, or the equinox, that, those kind of borders that you are used to on the calendar. To keep things nice and neat in the record book, we go by months. So December 1st is the beginning of the winter season here in Indiana. December, January, February, the winter season in terms of record keeping ends on February 28th or 29th if it'd be a leap year. Okay, so that I think is interesting. And that obviously plays a role in snowfall, which I'll get to in a second. Annually, the average temperature in Indianapolis, the average temperature rose 0.5 degrees. In terms of precip and snowfall, January, April, and June experienced the greatest increases in precipitation amounts, around a half an inch to almost 3/4 of an inch. Largely drops in monthly precipitation occurred in May, November, and December. May is not that big of a deal because May previously was the wettest month on record. It had a slight drop. June had a pretty significant increase, although June was a pretty wet month to begin with already. So those 2 months have now flip-flopped, and June statistically now is the wettest month on record in Indianapolis, followed by May. Precipitation increase in winter, again, December, January, February. Spring, March, April, May, and summer, June, July, and August. Decrease slightly in the fall, September, October, and November. The greatest seasonal increase was during the summer at over a half an inch, 0.64 inches officially. Annual and precipitation has increased almost by an inch and a quarter, 1.19 inches. Here's the one thing, too, and Mike Ryan did allude to this one, and it's no surprise if you pay attention to kind of how the last several years have trended snowfall-wise. Snow averages have decreased substantially in October, with minor drops in February and December. These trends are largely responsible for the annual snowfall average lowering 0.4 inches, so our previous average was 25.9 inches. It's now down to 25.5. So not a significant drop. We're still in the 25-inch range, but now we're more in the 25.5 and not closer to 26 inches. Subtle increases in snowfall average for January and March. Seasonal decreases of 0.8 inches in winter and 0.2 inches in fall. Increase of 0.6 inches in the spring. So it kind of all averages out there a little bit. Okay. So that's kind of the notes, and Mike Ryan will hit up on that, but obviously we'll get more specifics coming in. Some other communities around central Indiana, Lafayette is the only site with a drop in annual average temperature. They were down 0.8 degrees. Biggest rises in annual average temperature in Shelbyville and Muncie, 1.5 to 1.9 degrees. This may have to do with a smaller period of record. All other stations saw a rise of 0.4 to 0.7 annually. Largest rises occurred in the winter season, ranging from 1 degree to 2.6 degrees. That's a big shift. Minimum temperature rises were generally greater and more influential to the average temperature. I think it's also important to note that record keeping does not go nearly as far back at many of the other reporting stations compared to Indianapolis. So that's an important note. So that's why you may have some greater fluctuations. Okay. Lastly, precipitation-wise, for some of these outside reporting stations, annual precipitation changes were variable. Indy, Lafayette, and Muncie rose, while all other stations decreased. Summer season was either the same or wetter for all sites but Terre Haute and Shelbyville. So if you want to read up on all of that, go to weather.gov/IND. That is the Indianapolis National Weather Service website, and it is their news headline, very top one. It says 1991 to 2020, climate normals now available. So check that out. And again, future podcasts, either next week or the week after, will be solely based on the changes in these monthly average or these averages that we compare everything to now, and the big shift in that. Okay, so that was the big story that came down in the last week. A couple of other notes now as we're rolling through the forecast, and man, we've been just stuck in this cooling trend for a while now. And as I'm recording this on a Tuesday morning, it wasn't too bad this morning, thanks to we had some clouds and some sprinkles, kind of kept our temperatures in check. But Monday morning on the 10th, we had a low of 34 degrees, and one of the later frosts that we have had in quite some time. I was just kind of going through the record books here. This is the first temperature. The threshold I used was 35. It's the first time that we've hit 35 for the month of May this year. It does appear that, let me go back in my records, we did it one time last year between the May 1st and May 11th. But then you have to go all the way back to 2005. 2005, we had 3 days that between that time frame of basically the first third of May, where we had 3 days that were at 35 degrees or lower for low temperatures. The most, by the way, that we've ever seen, we've done 4 days in that time frame, 76, 66, 54, 47. That's when we did that 4 times. We may do it again Wednesday morning. So this new podcast will drop by Wednesday late morning. So we'll see. I think I had a low of 37 in my forecast for today, but there's going to be a lot of areas that could sneak down into the mid 30s. And then hopefully after that, we're going to kind of change things around with the pattern and, start to warm things up. We are due. Because we have been running so cold now, to date for the month of May, it is now marked as the 23rd coldest. Our average temperature is 53.7 degrees. So we got some work to do if we're going to kind of right the ship here a little bit and get things back closer to average. We do see that coming, and in the last segment, we'll talk about my forecast for the upcoming week coming up in just a bit. But my subject for the day today, I found this interesting. Yesterday, so May the 10th, was the 25th anniversary, I should say, of the movie Twister getting released. I can't believe it's been 25 years. You can say what you will about the acting or whatever, but if you're a weather nerd or a weather nut, this is a movie that you have watched a gazillion times. You can probably quote it from start to finish. I am one of those. It came out in a prime time for me when I was in high school. So right when I kind of knew what I wanted to start getting into weather. But it did want to lead me into a conversation. It made me think about storm chasing. And although I don't have a lot of experience, I have a very memorable experience with storm chasing when I was at Ball State University. And I'm going to spend a good time just kind of talking about that whole experience and the importance of storm chasers. And I had actually a storm chaser reach out to me. He's getting ready to go out to the plains on what he called a chasecation. But he's one of several chasers I'd like to talk to because it's a fascinating hobby. Some people make it into a business, but I want to talk about my personal experience because it was a life changer for me in how I approach weather. We'll talk much more about that coming up next here on Weather Weekly.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke or maybe a steamy billionaire. You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Ali Hazelwood, the latest romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Welcome back to episode number 14 here of Weather Weekly. I always appreciate your time. Thanks for spending time here. And this will be a good one for me. I think this will be fun. And like I said, I'm hoping to have a dialogue with some storm chasers coming up here over the coming weeks as we are right in the heart of severe weather season. But I just thought this would be a fun topic because of the anniversary of Twister. So those of you that are fans of Wish TV, you remember meteorologist Brad Mousehart. He is a good friend of mine. He's now down in Cincinnati. He posted on Facebook. He posted, today is the 25th anniversary of the greatest movie ever made. And he posted the poster for Twister on there. And I don't know if it's the greatest movie ever made, but it is a fun movie. If you're a weather lover, it is a fun movie. There are a lot of inaccuracies scientifically, if you want to get nitty gritty about it and everything. But if you don't go in trying to be Mr. Scientist, it's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. It is extremely quotable. In fact, there's numerous websites I think you can go on and you can get T-shirts that says "I have cows." You know, that's a distinct line from Twister. But when they're driving through and they see twin tornadoes and there's cows flying around and everything like that. I think I've been known to say a time or two just with the family, we're going on greenage when they're all looking at the storm starting to form, and Bill Paxton is out there. Bill is his name in the movie, and they're getting ready to kind of go chase storms and stuff like that. So it's an extremely quotable movie, and it's fun. It came out in a prime era for me in, what would be, do the math, 2006. So I was a freshman in high school. I remember going to, may have been the Regal in Carmel, possibly. It's out by the Clay Terrace Mall, which the Clay Terrace Mall did not exist in 1996. But there was that cinema that was out there, the Regal Cinema, just off of, what would that be, 146th Street. Went with a buddy of mine, and we watched the movie. I think he was bored. I thought it was great. And it's funny, I still will probably watch that movie at least once a year. I don't actively maybe pop it in the DVD player, but if it's on TV, I usually will stop wherever it's at. It brings back a lot of good memories from when I was in college, because we would watch that. All of my meteorology buddies at Ball State, we'd sit there and watch it. I remember coming back from my storm chase trip, which I'm going to spend time talking about here in a second. And I probably watched that movie almost every day for about a week or two straight, because I was coming off such a high of being on that storm chase trip. So, but it's interesting that movie, I think, resonated with so many people my age. And I think there is such an influx of storm chasers, whether they're trying to do it professionally or doing it as a hobby, because of that movie being released 25 years ago. And that leads me into my story here of my one and only opportunity of being able to go and chase storms. And unfortunately, this career that I've been in the positions I've been in, it never really granted me the opportunity to chase much. It was always a good resume booster to tell news directors, yeah, I have that experience. I've been out chasing before. I've seen several tornadoes. I know what I'm doing when it comes to going out and chasing. But when you're a meteorologist, you're in the studio more than likely. And again, up until 6 years ago, I was either doing mornings or I was the chief in Peoria. So I had to be the guy that was in studio. I wouldn't be able to go out and chase. And it just really hasn't had the opportunity. The severe weather hasn't been there quite as much here in central Indiana for me to chase. Plus, we have an enormous team. We've got photographers that know what they're doing when it comes to chasing as well. So usually you need to have more hands on deck in the studio than necessarily out in the field if they can go out and cover that on their own. So haven't had the opportunity to really do it quite as much, but I did have the opportunity in 2004. 2004, so it was my junior year of college going into my senior year. So that's summer. Ball State offered a class that was the study of severe local storms. And what we did was we went out for a full month and traveled basically the nation's midsection. We aimed out in the Central Plains, and we kind of just hung out there for 4 weeks. Now that class is offered in 2 different stints at 2 weeks apiece. And I can kind of discuss the pros and cons of that maybe a little bit later, but it was a month-long class when I was there. 6 credit hours. So it was good stuff, but it was a very popular trip. Now, guiding that trip, and he is no longer with Ball State, but someone that I deeply respect, probably one of my favorite teachers, instructors in my entire educational career, is Dr. David Arnold. And he was a fantastic guide and teacher for that whole trip. I felt like I got closer to him during that trip, and I learned so much. The way he was able to explain things happening in real time made a huge difference. But starting from the beginning, we started that trip. You had to go through the sign-up process, and finally I think they brought in like 15 of us. It might have been a little bit more, but like 15 of us that went on that trip. We would, I think we had either 2 or 3 of the big white vans that the university supplied for us. We had a meeting the week prior, and Dr. Arnold, we called him Doc. He was very open with us and said, look, there is a very high probability that we will not see a tornado. Tornadoes are extremely rare. Obviously, they make news headlines. They're, impressive to see on the news. And so you always want to show that. But, the realism of it all is they don't happen very often, right? And the big ones happen even less often. They're extremely rare. So tornadoes are rare in themselves. Big tornadoes, EF3, EF4, EF5, are extremely, extremely rare. So he wanted to stress to us, look, you guys are paying a lot of money for this trip. You're going to be gone from your family and friends for a while. But I don't want to get he wanted to set expectations, which is, that's the right thing to do. Because weather is no sure thing. We all know that. If you're a weather lover, the forecast isn't a sure thing. And so he would say, look, we're going to see storms. You're going to see some beautiful parts of the country. And if you take it with that and the process of forecasting and learning about how the atmosphere is working as we forecast on a daily basis, then you're going to get a lot out of this class. If you are just coming to this class because you want to see a tornado, expect to be disappointed. So he had us all going in with the right mindset. We had a great group of future meteorologists with us. Many at least worked in TV for a little while, and then maybe family life happened and they got out. Several of them are now working or had worked or currently working with the National Weather Service. One of them is actually working with the Storm Prediction Center. Brian Smith is his name. Smart man. And he was very smart as a kid in college. So no surprise in the success that he is having. But we all kind of went together and, it was interesting. Very good bonding experience. We all got along. No one really fought. It's kind of it's a crapshoot when you throw 15 to 20 college kids into the mix that probably didn't spend all of their time together. Sure, you had your kind of cliques of friends in the meteorology department. Not that it was a huge department to begin with. We had many classes together, but we didn't necessarily all hang out together outside of class. So kind of throwing us all together, you never know what's going to happen. But I think it helped our trip that things were really hot and heavy from the get-go. So May 2004, for those of you that don't remember, was an extremely active year. And so we went out in early May, and from the beginning, we had storms to kind of to get going. So what we would do on a daily basis is we would spend our nights driving to get ourselves in the right position for the next day so that we didn't have to drive hours and hours and hours just to go chase. So we started right out of the gate. We left Muncie, Indiana, probably around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and we drove until about 10 o'clock at night, and believe we stopped in Hays, Kansas. If I'm not, I'd have to double check on a map, but I believe it was around Hays, Kansas. That was a long drive. That's a long, long, long way to go when you're cramped up in a van. And you have to remember, smartphones really weren't a thing back then. We did have some limited text messaging capabilities, but we lost cell service pretty quickly once we got west of the Mississippi River. You're starting to get in wide open country out there. You had to keep calling. I think the number was *87 maybe, or stars. I can't remember, at least for my carrier. We had to call that constantly to download new cell tower data on our phone, essentially, so we could actually get some reception. But we set ourselves up for a chase the next day. And so how every day would work, and I think this, looking back on it, this was probably my favorite parts of the trip. So we'd stay in hotel rooms, and we all had roommates and stuff. And so we'd go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and Doc would have a briefing for us in his room at some given time. He'd let us know and say, hey, everybody meet in my room at, depending on if we needed to travel a lot or not. He'd say, hey, meet in my room either maybe 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Maybe sometimes he'd let us sleep in. It'd be 9 o'clock in the morning. But we'd meet in his room. He'd put a projector screen on his bed, hook it up to his laptop, and he'd show us everything that we look at as meteorologists online. We'd look at the current conditions, the current setup, how everything's kind of playing out. We'd look at the Storm Prediction Center risks for the day. And finally, then we'd go through the forecast. We'd look at a lot of the high resolution models, looking at all the layers, and kind of as a team, Doc would want us to decide where to go. Now, he had no problem saying, no, I don't think that's probably the right spot. But he wanted us to work that out on our own first and explain why we thought that, which I think was huge, because we easily could have been like, well, I want to go here, or I want to go here because that's right in the middle of the moderate risk, but he wanted more than that. He wanted to know, okay, this is where all of the convergence is happening. This is where your lower level jet is really picking up. He wanted some description. This is when your CAPE values are going to be at their highest in this location. This is when we think the cap's going to break. All those kind of things. And us figuring it out as a team, it was fun. It was fun. And really, it started making sense, because we screw this up, we're just going to be sitting out in the middle of nowhere and we're not going to see anything. And then we're trying to play catch up all day. So once we finally decided where we are going, depending on if we needed to travel or not, for the first day, I'll give that as an example. I don't think we really had to go very far. So we were able to kind of just ease into the day. I think some of us spent the time outside kind of throwing the football or frisbee around, just kind of killing time after breakfast. And then eventually got kind of closer to lunchtime. So we grabbed a quick bite to eat. And then it was basically, now let's wait and see. And if I remember correctly, we kind of got ourselves in position, and the cap, those of you that aren't real deep into meteorology, the cap is kind of like a lid on the atmosphere. You need the cap a lot of times to really help promote severe storms, because you want to break through that cap and it's going to really help these storms explode. But you don't want the cap to be too strong, because then it will suppress storm development. Okay. So basically, I think we were waiting on this cap to break. And I remember that being my first lesson. And it's something I probably had seen hundreds of times, but never really put it together. And this is why I always tell my interns that go to Ball State or go to Valpo. I think Purdue may even offer it now too, or any university for that matter that offers a storm chasing course. Do it, because you can read all you want in a textbook. But to actually have your professor explain what you read in that textbook that previous year in the spring or the fall. And you're watching it firsthand, be like, hey, remember when I said this, and this? Now you're seeing it. And to be able to put a visual on that was one of the best teaching tools I think I have ever experienced in my entire life. The cap breaking, I think, was one of the first things that I remember about that day, because if you, and you may be able to take this now thinking about it the next time we get thunderstorms. Usually when you have some high CAPE, this convective available potential energy, it's basically these air parcels rising freely in the atmosphere, and you need CAPE to help promote thunderstorms. You'd look for the puffiness of these clouds. Kind of starts off as a puffy cumulus cloud, but you'd start getting the towers building, right? And if it didn't break the cap, what would end up happening is it'd look a little bit wispy, if you will. And they'd basically just kind of fall apart, and then another tower would try to go and bust through the cap. Once it finally did that, it stayed that cotton ball, very puffy like, and we would take binoculars, and it was something I had never done before, but you could actually witness these cumuliform clouds just bubbling up all around it, almost like boiling water a little bit. It was incredible to see. And when they broke that cap, boy, they went and they exploded, and you get that anvil head, and here comes the thunderstorm. So day one, we finally get the cap to break, and we're kind of just chasing around Kansas for much of the day. And I think we may have been bouncing from Kansas to Oklahoma, and I think then we came back into Kansas a little bit, and we pulled off on the side of the road. And I remember what made this I don't think I'll ever get the image out of my head in that whole scenario. So we all had CB radios, but it was connected to our weather radio as well. And so we are getting the tornado warning for our area. And so Doc gets on the CB and he says, hey, that warning's for us. We're just going to hang out here because it's for the storm. We're in a safe position. We're on the south side of the storm. The storm's moving north and east. We've got great visibility, and we're just going to check this out. Well, we end up parking, and if I remember correctly, we couldn't get a real good parking spot to just get out of the van and look. We had to kind of run up a hill a little bit to look off in the distance. And all you could see were dark clouds, and you could see some really good, impressive Mamanas. And it was at the time of sun setting a little bit. So there was incredible contrast, just incredible contrast with colors of oranges and reds. And then you've got the grays from the storms and the dark navy blues that you're getting the contrast from. And I run up the hill. Most everybody else did not. It was me and two other people, and I run up the hill and I start screaming because what I see at the hill is this beautiful laminar tornado. It didn't even look like it was moving to me. It looked like a still image, but it was one of those, oh my gosh. That was my first tornado. And I was like, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And I turned around and I'm like, Doc, it's up here. And he comes running up and he goes, yeah, everybody come up. And I mean, he was so calm. He's been doing this for years. And everybody, I mean, I think it was everybody's first tornado in that group for the most part. And so we've got the cameras out. You have to keep in mind, again, cell phone cameras were garbage. So it would have been worthless for me to try to do a selfie with this thing or anything like that. I had like your digital camera and I'm just snapping away, just snapping away. Just a beautiful tornado. And we stood there probably for about 3 or 4 minutes, but it seemed like 30 seconds until Doc said, okay, let's move. It's moving away from us. Let's go try to catch up to it a little bit. So we did. yeah, so we kind of just followed that thing along, and then eventually it just kind of lifted, and it kept producing a tornado warning because there was a really tight mesocyclone on it, but I don't know if it ever really came back down. I think it did at some point, but it was too dark, and so we kind of stayed back. Obviously, Doc did not want to put us in a position to where we would be in danger and getting in the path of this tornado. So we kind of just stay behind it. We kind of just enjoy the lightning show. And I do remember as we're kind of riding along and we're just kind of trying to get ourselves in a position to chase next day, we end up rolling into a gas station that was leveled. Now, this wasn't one of your big like truck stop gas stations. This was like the middle of nowhere. You see it in the movies. There's like 2 pumps. In fact, I think that gas station was probably closed when the tornado or whatever did damage. I'm assuming the tornado went through, and yes, but we had pieces scattered on the road, and it came up on us very quick. Doc was always the lead car. He and his daughter, and I can't remember who else was with him, but he was the lead car, and then there was the 3 vans afterwards that we're chasing with Doc. And he got on the CB. He's like, "Hey, heads up, we got debris." Then we're starting to feel like, "Oh, we're in Twister, man. We got debris," and we're all like, "Woo!" And luckily nobody was hurt. And we watched the news that night, and it sounded like that tornado stayed in pretty rural areas. The damage was minimal, and I think it ended up being rated maybe an EF1. It looked a lot bigger to me than I think it probably really was, but with it being the first, and just the contrast in colors just made it look unbelievable. But that was day number 1, and then we wrapped it up for the night. I don't think many of us really slept. We were just like, whoa, that's crazy. And that was the first night, and word kind of got out somehow. Well, I will say this. First of all, I at the time was working at WLBC. It's an FM station in Muncie. I was a part-timer there. I worked there starting in high school. I worked there all through college, and they were gracious enough to give me the entire month off and to let me do this. But they're like, "Will you call in? We'd love to hear some reports from you in the field." And so I called in the very next day, talked to the late great Tom Hammond, who was the news director at WLBC, and he interviewed me and just kind of talking about the whole experience, basically kind of going through what I just went through with you here. And I think the word got out from there. And so we were doing interviews with several of the TV stations here in Indianapolis. A lot of them were just calling us on the phone. We did phoners with them. We were actually on Good Morning America nationally, which was pretty incredible as well. So that was a neat experience. Just after a couple of days, I think we had another day where we actually caught a couple of tornadoes. So that's kind of got the ball rolling. So it was like the first couple of days they were hot and heavy, severe weather. I want to say the second day that we were out there, maybe the third, we ran into some incredible hail. To that point, I don't think I'd ever seen hail any larger than maybe a quarter. And I remember Doc explaining to me the hail core and how that is visible to us at the surface. And it's something that I never had really acknowledged and probably had never seen to that degree out into the plains. But this storm had a very aqua tint to it. And I said to Doc, "Doc," I was like, "what is that? Why does that look?" It looked green. I mean, it was there's no other way to explain it. It had this very aqua bluish kind of hue to part of the storm. He said, "That's the hail core." He goes, "That is a lot of hail or it's some really big hail, one or the other." And so we got moving. He wanted to get us out of the hail core because while hail is very cool, it is very damaging to vehicles. We did not get out of the hail core, and so we got stuck in what I remember as, I think, at least golf ball. I'm pretty sure it was baseball size hail. And the sound of that hitting the top of your vehicle, I don't think will ever leave my head. That was one of the loudest, I wouldn't call it scary, but it was definitely an uneasy feeling when it comes to that sound. Because I was sitting in the front passenger seat, and I was a little concerned that the windshield was going to give way. And it really, really came down. And what I also remember is we just kind of pulled to the side of the road because we were getting this feeling that we were just basically keeping up with the hail core. So we were eventually just going to let this pass and then we can move on. And we ended up in the middle of nowhere on some county road. Nobody else is traveling it. And all I remember is these poor cows, and they're just standing there and they're just taking it. And I'm hearing it, murr. I'm sure it hurt. None of them were really taking shelter under trees or anything. They're just laying there, standing there. I think most of them were standing there. None of them were running around. They were just standing there and just taking a pelting from baseball size hail. But we did have a lot of dents in the vans. I remember that distinctly. And yeah, that was pretty incredible. First large hail experience. The biggest day was, and I wish I would have written down the date. I kind of decided to do this subject matter, right on a whim, but the date, I want to say it was probably about a week into it. I know it wasn't right at the beginning. It was probably about a week into it. There was a high-risk day. There was a high-risk day in Kansas and Nebraska, I believe. And so we were kind of hovering in that, if I remember correctly. Now I'm going to have to look at the map. I believe we are in Beatrice, Nebraska. Is that right? I'm looking at the map right now. Kind of thinking out loud, so I apologize. Yes. So we're in Beatrice, Nebraska, which is, if you're not familiar, it's kind of in the southeastern corner of the state. So Kansas bordering down to the south. Lincoln, Nebraska is up into the north. Lincoln, obviously, is where the University of Nebraska is. Kansas City is maybe a couple of hours south and east. Not a whole lot in Beatrice. There was a hotel that we stayed in, and I think there's a Walmart there. We got an oil change. And yeah, so we went there, and it was a high risk. So we went into Doc's room. We did the forecast for the day. What was awesome about that day was my current employer, Wish TV, decided after the success that we had basically in the opening week that they wanted to come out and spend the day with us. So then meteorologist, and he's a good friend of mine, I met him for the first time, Sean Ash. He doesn't work here anymore. He's at a competing station that I won't bring up, but he still works in Indianapolis, a great meteorologist, but he was working here at Wish TV at the time. So he came out with photojournalist Marcus Collins, who is also, he is currently still an employee here at Wish TV. They came out and were able to get out, I think, while we were all sleeping to Beatrice that night. And so Sean and Marcus joined us in that morning forecast meeting, and they filmed their stuff and they just kind of watched the whole process of all of us going through the forecast. High risk day. All the ingredients were perfect for severe storm and rotating storm development. So basically all it was at that point was we grabbed our lunch, and it was the waiting game. And it was a matter of the cap breaking. I remember us basically just parking on the side of the road, and we sat in a field and just waited. In fact, I think, I can't remember it was one of Doc's friends who was another professor, Pat something. I can't remember. He was a meteorology professor then at Bowling Green State University. And he brought out some lawn chairs, and we just basically sat out there and waited for the cap to break. And once the cap broke, it was non-stop tornado warnings. And I remember seeing the first one drop, and it was a beautiful, gray, thin, not a large tornado. It looked like it could maybe get going, but I think there was just so much going on around it that the actual storm in itself never really got to mature because there was energy just getting sucked up from all over the place. You had thunderstorms just developing everywhere. At one point, we had 3 funnel clouds coming down in a very close proximity. We had the ongoing tornado to our right. We had a tornado that was trying to form as a funnel cloud to our left. We're right in the middle. Doc's telling us we got to get moving. Because at that point, we were basically in the bear's cage, and we needed to get into a safer area so we wouldn't have any tornadoes drop right on us. So it was kind of an intense, my goodness, I would say, I would guesstimate hour to 90 minutes. It seemed like it was 15 minutes to us at the time. But I'm sure it went long. It went on for a while. And finally, we kind of got out of the danger area and was in a better chasing spot to where we could just kind of follow these storms. And man, it just dropped tornado after tornado after tornado. And I think before the sun set, when we just couldn't chase anymore, and the tornadoes were just too far gone, out of reach for us, and we were losing the light of day. I think the final tally was 14 tornadoes, and many of those came in a 2-hour span. Now, most of those were EF0s or EF1s. I think the entirety of our trip, I don't know if we saw anything larger than an EF2. But no matter, it was a tornado, and that was an unbelievable day. That I still tell people about. I'm lucky enough that I kept a copy. My mom videotaped the special that Wish did a 2-day special on that day specifically. But I'm lucky enough that I work here that I've been able to see basically all the raw video, and Marcus Collins has been able to give that to me that I can show my kids and be like, look, I was on this trip. So, because, again, this was an era when I didn't have the luxury of having a smartphone and being able to video everything and that kind of stuff. I have photos, but having the video is special. So that day specifically was special. Now, the rest of the trip, we did see a couple more tornadoes before it was all said and done, but the pattern kind of just flattened out a little bit the last 2 weeks. So we spent most of our time kind of sightseeing around areas, which was also cool because it was areas of the country I'd never been to. We went down to Roswell, New Mexico. We went through Rocky Mountain National Park, went through Denver. We didn't go by Mount Rushmore, but we did go through the Badlands and check all that out in the Dakotas. So areas that I've not been to since, and I was very grateful that I was able to see that part of the country. Went through a lot of Texas, went through Oklahoma, went through Oklahoma City, and that was a great experience. We did end up going through one really impressive hailstorm just outside of Denver, if I remember correctly. It wasn't big hail. It was more the quantity. It looked like it had snowed. And that was the first time I'd ever seen hail of that magnitude in terms of amount of hail. I thought that was pretty cool. So, but some interesting stories to go along with that, and it kind of ties into as I kind of wrap up everything, because I don't want to talk too much, because as I said, I want to spend some time over the coming weeks talking to storm chasers. And if you're one, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear your stories, and maybe we can kind of get a roundtable discussion kind of going about storm chasing, the good, the bad, the ugly kind of thing. What I did notice, there were several other schools that went out chasing. Oklahoma University was one of them. They have just a powerhouse meteorology program at OU there. I want to say Penn State was out there as well. And the other thing I remember distinctly was there were actually tour groups. And I think you can still do this. At least pre-COVID, you could, where any adult could sign up for a week-long or 2-week-long excursion where you basically did what we did as college students. And you'd ride in a van and you'd have these meteorologists that would be your guide, and they would chase tornadoes. And that was an actual thing. And they were booked solid. And again, I think it all ties into that Twister, how that came about, and the fascination of storm chasing came about to people, 25 years ago. We ran into a Yahoo out there. I don't remember the guy's name, but I think we were waiting, and maybe we were taking a restroom break somewhere, and there was a guy that we ended up talking to because we kind of saw him at a couple of different places. And you see a lot of these guys that chase. If you're in these areas that they see you there, they kind of want to tag along, they want to follow. And when you're chasing in the middle of nowhere, you don't have a lot of options when it comes to using the restroom or getting a snack or getting gas to fill up. So everybody kind of stops in the same spots if you're going to be chasing kind of in the same areas. So, you run into kind of the same people over and over and over again, at least for one day or maybe 2 days. And there was one guy that I remember, don't remember the guy's name. I remember he had a station wagon, beat up one. It reminded me of the station wagon from National Lampoon's Vacation, if you remember that. Kind of had, it looked like it was straight out of the maybe 70s or 80s. Kind of that ugly green with the wood paneling side. And we got to talking with him, and he opened up his back hatch as we were kind of waiting for everybody to get done, whatever we were doing, either getting food or using the restroom, waiting for all the students to get back. It was me and I think like 5 other people in the class, and we're talking to him, and I think our professor was over there too. And he's got, I am not kidding, it wasn't Dorothy, but it was basically something similar. And this guy was going to make an attempt to lay whatever equipment it was. And it looked like it was like something that he just essentially threw together in his garage. It was like this metal cone thing with what I would equate to like silverware and aluminum foil. Didn't look official. All right. He had like 3 of these. And he's like, I'm going to dump this in front of a tornado and I'm going to get measurements and all this other stuff. So this dude obviously is living the Twister life. All right. We did unfortunately see him I think either later that day or the next day, and his car was like, I think in a ditch. He was fine. We stopped to see if he needed help. He said no. But I think he tried to pull off the side and get the instrument in front of a tornado, and it didn't work out. And so, but there was a few people like that. So it was interesting. Anyway, if you're a meteorology student right now, any university, and your university or college offers something like this, 100% take it. Take it. If money is a problem, see if you can get grants. I took a loan out, and I went into debt for it, but it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it to me. Just the experience. And even if I didn't see what we saw, which to Ball State students, they still talk about that trip in 2004. It's one of the most successful trips that Ball State has ever had for chasing storms. I've had several interns that have come through Wish TV and said, oh, you were on that 2004 trip. I was like, I was. That was a pretty good one. And most of your trips won't be that good. But even if you just see severe storms forming, just watching that happen in real time is just unreal. I highly, highly recommend you take the opportunity to do that. So that's kind of my story in a very brief synopsis, although I say brief, I've been talking for almost 45 minutes. But I could probably talk about it for 2 hours, which is why I want to bring other storm chasers on, because you don't want to hear me ramble on. I want to be able to talk to other people and bounce stories off of each other and stuff, and just experiences, because storm chasers, fair and not fair, sometimes do get a bad rap. There are some idiots that go out there, and a lot of it is they just solely do it for money. They want to sell their videos to news organizations and for social media notoriety. There are other storm chasers that is an invaluable tool to people like me that are broadcasting, trying to get severe weather information out. And these storm chasers are out on ham radios, and they're talking to the Weather Service, and they're saying what they see. They are the eyes. Because I work in a windowless studio. So all I know is what I see on radar. And if there's no chasers out there, we don't get confirmation of what's going on. And radar isn't always 100% right. So storm chasers are an invaluable tool. And so I want to spend some time thanking those people and giving you the chance to listen to them as well. So that puts kind of the wrap up on my story. And if you haven't already, watch the movie Twister. And if you've watched it a million times, just for fun, because it's the anniversary week, 25 years ago, check that out. 25 years ago this week, Twister, the phenomenon, Twister, came to be. We'll look ahead to your rest of your week forecast and try to get you through the rest of the month of May. That's coming up next here on Weather Weekly. All right, quick checkup on your forecast here as we are rolling right through the middle of May. So this is for the week of May 10th. By the time you're listening to this, if you were listening to it on drop day, it would be May 12th. We're going to stay on the cool side of things for the next couple of days. Highs only in the mid 60s. I think we may have another round of frost Thursday morning, but then I see a pretty good warm-up heading our way. By the weekend, I think we're closer to 70. Average high for middle of May should be around 72, 73 degrees. Do have a chance of showers and thunderstorms on Sunday, and it does appear, at least in the extended here, Monday and Tuesday of the following week, we're into the mid, if not upper 70s, so knocking on the door of 80 degrees. The 8 to 14-day outlook looks pretty good, too, if you are a lover of warm weather. They have much of the nation's midsection, including central Indiana, with a high probability of above average temperature. So it looks like we're finally starting to flip the pattern here and starting to feel a little more late spring-like and feeling like we're kind of gearing towards summer, right? Kids are almost out of school. I think my kids have less than 2 weeks left. So we're gearing up for the Indianapolis 500 here in Indianapolis, coming up here in a couple of weeks. So we're used to kind of hotter weather around this time, late May, early June. So let's bring it on. Let's do it. My thanks to you here for checking out this week's podcast episode. Greatly appreciate your time. I know sometimes we just kind of go ups and down and ins and outs, and we're everywhere, and we're still trying to kind of feel this thing out, but it's all fun. And again, we'd love to hear your ideas. If you have something you'd like for us to address, someone you want us to talk to, send me an idea. Email me at marcus.bailey@wishtv.com or hit me up on social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We will have another fresh episode heading your way next Wednesday, as we are now getting closer to the end of May. Again, my thanks for you for joining us here on Weather Weekly, a proud member of the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Discover more from Storm Track 8 Weather and Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com, and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Plus, be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.